Hey everyone, happy Monday. Thank you for joining me. I'm Barb Egan, and today we're going to talk about negative self-talk and how to combat it for good. So this is probably one of my favorite topics to talk about. In fact, I wrote a whole course on it with Switch Research, an online course, and even with the workbook. I'm so passionate about this that we had to not just have one workbook, but three. And so I'm so thankful that you joined us today. You started off your Monday with us to just care for your mental health. And I'm really excited to have you on. So today, this is a trendy topic. You know, we're going to touch on parts of this all the time in every one of our YouTube lives, probably, because this is the most number one probably presenting issue people come to counseling for, is that they want to change these negative self-talk, that it's in their head. They want to get out of their own head, be more confident, live more alive, come more into who they're created to be, find what they're good at, and just paint that beautiful picture of growing and confidence and goal setting and all of that wonderful stuff. So today, what we're going to start with is I would just love to hear, what do you think of when you think of negative self-talk? So if you could type in the chat box and I'll read through some of these. I even brought my whiteboard because I'm going to just kind of write them out and see what we come up with, because it's amazing to see what I think is probably similar or the same to what you may think, or different, but it's amazing because we really think we're the only one struggling. That is where we just really buy into that of I'm the only one who thinks this way. Back to that example last week that we talked about walking down the street, you see an acquaintance, you wave at them, but they don't wave back at you. And psychology talks about this negativity bias, which is a fancy word, that basically most of us will go to a negative thought first, a negative self-talk of, they don't like me. I look like such a fool. I'm never gonna say hi to people again out in the street. And then you isolate, you avoid, and that negative self-talk or that inner critic really grows. So I would love to hear, what does negative self-talk sound like in your life currently, maybe in the past, or some of your friends? What are some common phrases or words even that you have heard? And I'm going to write them out. We're going to see. So I'll put it up just like this. So negative self-talk. All right, so we have perfectionism. That's a big one. And those are often around unrealistic expectations. So we have perfectionism. Oh, is there a switch guided journaling for negative self-talk? There will be, it's coming out. So my online course is on the website currently, and our workbooks, our journals will be the next one. So it's a 3-part series. That's what we're going to talk about today, is identify, challenge, replace. Those are kind of the 3 steps I break it down into. Feeling okay. So Katrina says it's more of a truth than thoughts, and it's hard to challenge. So negative self-talk, let's say it feels true. It feels true, even if it's not. Okay, I'm not good enough. Another really good one. And this can be things that you've said to yourself in the past, in the present, what you've heard friends say. The I'm not good enough comes out the most if I can boil down somewhat. I'm not blank enough. Most often, I'm not good enough. Ooh, looking at things like friendship or healthy family that other people experience and thinking, oh, that's for other people, not for me. Maddie, that is amazing. So basically what you're saying, comparison. And the thing about comparison is nobody wins. Comparison is the thief of joy. One of my favorite quotes by Corrie ten Boom. And she survived Nazi Germany and World War II. And she's an amazing woman to be able to speak life after such hardship. Comparison. And that's what I find in my own life too, of negative self-talk when I'm in my own head or just getting in that spiral. I think we all know what we talk about, where it feels so true, even if it's not. But the comparison, nobody wins. The other person doesn't win. They may not even know that I'm thinking that. I certainly don't win because I'm putting myself down. That's amazing. And we often don't believe it for ourselves. That belief is a big one. Belief that we can't get better, belief that I've always been this way, belief that I'll never change. But remember, we've talked about how the brain, neuroplasticity is the fancy psychology word, but the brain is like a muscle. It can change. It just takes a lot of repetition and a lot of hard work, probably somewhere around 6 to 8 weeks. Like that's a good time frame. Not hard, set in stone, cookie cutter, exact treatment plan, but around that way for our brain to develop new neural pathways in the brain. New ways of thinking. That's why counseling, these things, any type of mental workout, I call it, reading books, podcasts, really practicing, which again, step 3 would be identify, challenge, replace. Step 3 is we start to get collection of this evidence for these new beliefs. And we'll get there, but I'm just painting a picture. Okay, let's see what else people have seen. Oh, Malia, I won't be validated if I even attempt to speak about my feelings. So it's kind of what you're saying is, what's the point? and you kind of touched on something huge. So what's the point? What's the point of even trying? You touched on something huge, Malia: validation. Validation is the number one thing of changing behavior, changing feelings, changing thoughts, of just being able to say, I see that that's hurtful. I even can understand why you'd feel that way. I'm sorry you feel that way. So taking some of those wording and validating to yourself, or having a friend validate you, or having a therapist validate you, is huge to not only combat the what's the point, why even try this, but the belief to start to create that new core belief is huge. Thank you for sharing that, Malia. Thinking I can wear something because I don't have the ideal body, thinking I cannot wear something because my body looks a certain way. Yes, Amanda. I mean, how many of us in our culture, because of Instagram or social media, and it could be doctored, or these people maybe have what, good for them. But again, comparison and body image is a huge one. Negative self-talk is often around our image. I'll say body image. That's a really big one. Good. And I'm going to even add social media right underneath there, because whether it's comparison to our body, or to life events, or this trip that this person's taking, or what, everyone looks like they're living their best life on social media. As a therapist, I will guarantee you no one is living their best life right now after the 2 years that we've come out of. If you are, amazing. I'm so happy for you. But from my experience of what I've been walking through with people over the last 2 years, nobody's doing that well. Oh, okay. Katrina's using some good words here to identify negative self-talk. Always. And Katrina, she says, no one likes me, and why would they? So she used some great big words here. So no one, never, always, everybody, those big definitive words. That's a good sign in that, again, that step one of just identifying. That's what we're doing. We're identifying. This is really step one. Identify our negative self-talk, of who it's coming out around. Are there certain people in real life, a certain friend, that comparison really jumps out at, a parent or a family member? Are there certain situations where the comparison comes in more? Maybe it's social media, and that's trying to tell you, I need to limit who I follow, or limit my time. Maybe I put a timer on my phone then, 10 minutes. Yes, it seems short, but if you really need more than that, you can add it, but I guarantee you probably find something else to do too, if you really liked. So find where, identify. This is all identify the type of words that we're using. No one, those big ones. Identify the situation. Maybe it's on social media. Maybe it's around certain friends or people. Maybe it's around certain places or that situation occurs, like a work meeting, a new group that you attend, or trying to make friends, things like that. So you guys are amazing right now, looking at all the identify portions. Let's see some other ones. Okay, Ariola, being too sensitive. Again, kind of one of those words that you're too much and not enough, all at the same time. Too blank, or not enough blank. Wow. Another one, caring too much. Yep. Oh, Malia, asking for help means I'm useless. Yes, asking for help is a sign of weakness. That's a myth that we often all believe to some extent, and what keeps people from even counseling or talking to people. But we talked about it last time. You would not wait until every single bone in your body was broken to show up at the hospital or doctor. You do not have to wait till everything in your life is kind of crumbling, or you're barely above the water, to go to counseling, or to reach out for help, or to let someone safe in. And I think I mentioned about Brene Brown last time. I really like her work. She has such great work. If you're looking for, a podcast or books, The Gifts of Imperfection are one of my favorite books out there. It's all about this negative self-talk, just loving ourselves as is. But she says that shame, that's that really heavy, weighty, hot thing that keeps us isolated, or I'm not good enough. So guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad. Well, what she also says is the antidote to shame is vulnerability with safe people. Not to everybody. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story or to see what's going on inside of you, like what we're writing down. But vulnerability in other people often looks like bravery. And if you think about it, as we're writing these down, I bet we're thinking, wow, Malia or Amanda or Katrina or anyone who's been sharing in the chat box, you're brave. You're brave for saying these things. You're brave for speaking up. And I bet you resonate. Other people resonate hearing what you're saying. And so your vulnerability actually is bravery. The same thing is true for us with the right people. Vulnerability is bravery. And this is how we really identify and get out of it. So let's see what other good things y'all are saying. Dealing with mental health means I'm crazy and therefore I'm less than others. Yes, that myth of, weakness or asking for help. And that is simply not true. Jamie, giving a good example. I apologized to an on-call doctor over the weekend for bothering them. After the call, I basically yelled at myself. Why did you apologize? That's our job. You're never going to learn. That's a good one. It's often the overthinking. It's the replay of the event. And in fact, in psychology, it's not necessarily the event that we really care about, the conversation that we have. It's how we or how you uniquely view that event that determines if you'll have negative self-talk or a more rational, balanced self-talk. So for example, if we're replaying what we said over and over and over after a meeting of, I can't believe I said that, or I was such an idiot to say that. They think I'm such a fool. I don't know what I'm talking about. Or why did I apologize? So if we go like that, that's the negative self-talk. That's home to all of these things. We have identified our situation. I would encourage you to write it out like I'm doing here. Write it out. What are you saying to yourself? What was the situation? And then to be able to challenge it a little bit, that step 2 challenge would be, okay, what's a different way to look at this? Again, think about a friend, really visualize their face. What would they say to you? How would they say it? That self-tone is a big one. Or what you would say to them. And then ultimately, we get to be in control. This is really hard. We get to be in control, though, of what we tell ourselves. If we get lost in our own head and we spiral down, why did I say that? I look like such a fool. I'll never learn anything. Again, all the negative self-talk, those big words that we're saying. Once we identify it, then we can be very intentional in trying to challenge it. And we do not have to believe this 100%. That's the good news, is even if it's like, I'm going to tell myself this, but it doesn't feel real yet. Well, feelings are real, but they're not always reality. So keep going with it. Kind of fake it till you make it here a little bit. But what you can say is, I'm learning. I did apologize because I didn't want to be an inconvenience, but next time I'm going to try not to. That might be my go-to people pleaser instinct of, I'm sorry. But once I catch myself, once I identify that I'm about to do that, I'm going to take a deep breath. And instead of saying I'm sorry, I'm going to say thank you for working over the weekend, or thank you for your understanding. Thank you for your patience. And those are great things to practice, of boundaries and self-talk externally to others, instead of, I'm sorry, I'm getting back to you so late. Well, let's say, it's not that late. It was just the weekend, and you deserve to have a weekend. You deserve to have boundaries. And so what you can do, instead of saying, I'm sorry, I'm so late, or I'm sorry, is try, thank you for your patience, or thank you for your understanding. And it's just all about word choice, as we're seeing here too, is the word choice really does matter. It makes a big impact, as if we have negative self-talk or more balanced or more even positive self-talk. It's all about our word choice. So great example. Thank you for sharing that. Again, another one, Malia, I'm just too much. I'm either too much or not enough. And it could be all at the same time. Maddie, fixed mindset about always be like this, labeling myself as weird, awkward, shy, any of that. So putting labels on ourselves. And in psychology, again, we call these cognitive distortions. It's a fancy word for basically the no one, never, always, those big definitive words is a thinking trap. It usually perpetuates anxiety, stress, depression, negative self-talk. Cognitive behavioral therapy is really the gold standard of treatment against this. So CBT, if you've heard of that, that's usually the therapeutic approach that we usually go to get rid of that negative self-talk, which again can really be boiled down to identify, challenge, replace. But you guys are doing such a great job of even using words like fixed mindset or no one, too much, not enough, always be like this. Labeling, that's another cognitive distortion, or what I call thinking traps for easy terminology, because they really do trap you in this negative self-talk. And we talk a lot about this in the online course and journal that's going to be coming out. But I just want to paint a really good picture for you that if you even Google cognitive distortions or thinking traps, you're going to see about, say, 10 about that we have most often. And I bet you'll resonate with them. And if we know that sometimes these are counterfeit ways of thinking, or they steal our joy because they're often rude in comparison too, well, then we can identify that, hey, maybe this is a counterfeit. It's not necessarily truth. It's kind of like in money laundering. You study the real, actual truth, the right way, the right dollar, the right bill so well that when you see a counterfeit, even if it looks to the naked eye like, hey, this is legit, you know the truth so well. You know who you are. You know your values. You know your worth so well that when a counterfeit thinking trap or cognitive distortion comes along and tries to label you, or to put those big negative self-talk or those big definitive words into your head, you can identify it as counterfeit. And you get to then choose, do I listen to it or do I not? And it sounds simple. I know it's not. It's not simple and it's not easy, but it's doable. And it's so worth it. And it's so worth it for you. And I just want to encourage you that you can do this. It will take some work, but it's so worth it. And you're so worth it to do that. Shame and guilt. Yep. Somebody identified with that. So all of us. See, isn't this so good to hear and see? I'm not the only one. And it's so powerful. Why is it so hard to hang on the truth once you've had a breakthrough or understanding? Because it seems to evaporate. Oh, Malia, I love that picture. So I'm going to put this down for a second, but we're going to come back to this. Don't worry. But the evaporate part seems so true. And I love that word. Something about that really resonated with me, that evaporate word. So last week, and again, a lot of these are just principles I'm going to talk on a lot because I love this topic and we need to hear it a lot. This is all repetition. Repetition builds strength and new pathways of thinking in the brain. So this is all good. Okay, so if a negative thought, like anything we wrote on the board of I'm too much, I'm not enough, I'm a loser, I'm stupid, or any of those labels that we put on negative self-talk, how it is stored in the brain is it's emotionally stored, meaning that it's like Velcro. Remember, we talked about it last week of a negative experience or emotion, even self-talk associated with it can be stored like Velcro. Now, this is not cement, but Velcro, it can be pretty tough. It's like kind of hard. It takes some effort to get it out. And so that effort is identifying. That effort is challenging it and speaking kindly to yourself, practicing self-compassion. That effort is replacing that self-talk with what a friend would say to you or what you would say to a friend, and then actually practicing it, even when it doesn't feel real yet. The key is yet. Keep going. So Velcro, it's stuck in the brain. Now it's not cement, but it is hard. It's going to take a lot of effort to get out. And remember, the brain's like a muscle. So in order to grow a muscle, let's say your quadricep and you want to get stronger, you've got to have some discomfort. You've got to have hard workouts and pain a little bit the next day, which is actually a really good sign that your muscles are breaking down to grow back stronger. And again, over time and consistency, you're going to look back, say, in about 2-3 months and realize how much stronger, how much faster you got just by incorporating squats and targeted specific exercises, maybe with the help of a professional like a strength and conditioning coach or a personal trainer. into your life. Now, it doesn't mean that you do it once a week for an hour, but if you incorporate it 3 times a week, even of those practices in those exercises into your life over those 3 months, you're going to notice a big difference. And so to combat the evaporation of, a happy or a positive or an even more neutral or balanced way of thinking of, I'm learning. I spoke up to that doctor on call and I said, thank you. And I just appreciated their care and I'm going to let it go. It doesn't even have to be positive self-talk. It could just be pretty neutral like that. The more that we practice saying that to ourselves, the more likely we're going to believe that in a future example. Maybe not even that specific example, but the next time that I speak up and I'm about to say, oh, I'm sorry for burdening you. Or even if it's internally, I automatically think that, but I'm able to catch that. I'm able to identify it. And then instead of playing through that music, that song, really, I'm able to say, well, wait a second. Thank you for serving me. Thank you for your understanding. I really appreciate your care today. And that way we don't put ourselves down, which again is kind of the comparison. So it's all of these things, all those things we wrote on the board kind of interlock together. And that can help with the evaporation, is just incorporating it a couple times a week, being intentional of how you talk to yourself, not allowing your thoughts to run rapid, but just to be able to really take them captive, write them out. That's what I encourage people to, just to start to identify them and write them out. When there's something about writing it out that helps us get out of our head already and give a more objective perspective. And then from there, it's much easier to start to challenge them, especially if you're in counseling or with a friend or have a friend in mind of what that person would say. Again, write it out. I'm a big believer in writing it out. All this is repetition. Does not have to be an hour of your day every day. This can be 5 or 10 minutes of intentional work that over time, let's say a month, you're going to see some difference, but definitely in 2 months or so, you're going to see some new ways of thinking. Fake it till you make it, until it sticks permanently. Well, I think there's something to that, but you have to be intentional. You can't just tell yourself positive thinking. That's why I like positive psychology, but I think it misses some things too, is that you can practice these things for a process, but you don't necessarily have to believe it right away. And there has to be some skin in the game. So going from a negative self-talk, let's say of one of these, of I'm not good enough, or you've labeled yourself, or it's something about body image, to then I'm so beautiful, I'm so worthy of love. Yeah, that would be great. But if you go for so long, day after day, for years, telling yourself that negative thought, and then all of a sudden believe over here on the positive spectrum, your brain to believe it, no way, Jose, that's not going to happen. So again, those negative thoughts are like Velcro. They are able to be undone. It takes a lot of work, but positive thoughts are more like Teflon, that nonstick frying pan. So unless we really think of it, build some evidence for that, start to look for it anywhere we go and collect evidence for it, write it out, say, oh, this is where I showed up today and I was really proud of myself. Oh, this is where I wore that and I felt really good in my own skin. This is where I felt I was really being authentic of who I am. And that felt really good and empowering. And you write that down, you think about it, you meditate on it, meaning you re-visualize it. You think about it from that day. So like at the end of the day, you can write down, maybe some highlights of your day or things you're grateful for. And that was it. You write it down, you think about it, you let it really sink into your brain. And we want to think about it for about 20 or so seconds, but we just want to be really intentional about it, because you're right. Otherwise it will evaporate. All right, Katrina says, speaking up and getting my needs met, then feeling guilty for it and like I don't deserve it. Yes. But again, combating it, challenging it, that would be, I am worthy of love. And sometimes I like to use this question of who told me I'm not worthy of love? And if sometimes we can identify maybe an ex's voice, a parent's voice, a critical teacher, coach's voice, we cannot differentiate their voice from ours. Sometimes it's someone else's external voice, critical voice, that has become our own. And it's really hard to differentiate. Is that really mine? Is that really true? or is that somebody else's? And then we got to do some work around that. So who first said that to me? Let's see, Maddie. Yes, I've been journaling at the end of every day for over a year now and has made a huge difference in my life. That's awesome, Maddie. And journaling can be really overwhelming because if you look at a blank page and you're like, oh, where do I start? I don't know, so I'm not going to start. That's okay. But I like to suggest, even that, let's see, there's a bullet journal, there's the gratitude, there's the 5 minutes a day journal, there's like the 1 line a day journal, or the 5-year journal too. There's lots of those little ones on, say, Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Chapters or Indigo in Canada. There's a lot of good things like that help you with prompts. And that's what counseling can do too, or even online or Pinterest. And again, the self-love journals are really good one, really help. Even for myself, what I try to do is I do it of, what were the highlights of my day? What were really good that I was grateful for? And I want to break them down. And it's amazing when I forget or I don't really even pay attention to unless I'm intentional about it. And that's intentional is a huge word here. It's just being intentional of writing those out and then writing out, what was hard? Or what did I learn? So it could be like a pro-con list. It could be a highs and lows list. It could be what I learned today list. It could be how I showed up today, how I'm proud of myself. And sometimes it's usually personalized when I work with people of saying, okay, what is that negative thought? Like we did, we're writing it out. We're seeing what's the situation that triggers it. Sometimes it's around work and meetings. Sometimes it's around certain people. Sometimes it's around certain thoughts or those go-to phrases is I'm not good enough. And then we just combat it and collect some evidence every single day for how was I enough today? How was I good enough at my job today? What was I good at my job? And let's get some really good specifics here. So again, we're trying to get some evidence for this new belief so it doesn't just evaporate away, but it sinks in. So how was I good at my job? And I write that down. And over time, I get to look back and see all of these things, not just once or twice, but maybe for a whole month or more. And I'm like, wow, I wouldn't have even paid attention to that if I didn't write it down. And we don't just stop at how was I good at my job? How was I a good person? How was I a good friend? How was I a good daughter? How was I a good wife? How was I a good mother? What did I learn today? How was I true to myself? How was I true to certain values in my life that I really, come alive in of maybe it's hard work or creativity? How did I do that and honor that today? And although that sounds even maybe a little like a lot, what I'm sharing right now, but it can take only 5-10 minutes. But those 5 or 10 minutes, just like the squatting exercise with the quadriceps, over time gets that muscle so much stronger, so much more powerful. It fires so much quicker. So instead of going into a meeting and then automatically thinking, don't speak up, you have nothing to say. Well, I've combated it. I've done a lot of the work consistently that I go in and I think, okay, I'm going to say this one thing today. I can do it. And I maybe borrow someone else's voice. Maybe that's a therapist or a friend or a family member, but it's take a deep breath, center yourself, and go in and pick one thing to practice at or one thing to implement, one thing to speak up in. Because if I try to do that's really hard. But if I could do one, I could focus on that and I could be proud of myself. Thank you. Write it out intentional. I can review my written notes. Absolutely. Yes. I believe all the things, but they don't integrate into who I am. So Shelley, that's a great point of why maybe you're not getting unstuck from negative self-talk is it has to be emotionally connected with you. If it's not, it's going from that negative to that too positive, or it just doesn't connect. Your brain is it's going to be Teflon, the nonstick frying pan. It's not going to stick. It has to be something unique to you in your situation of what you're trying to go up against and what you're trying to, identify, replace here. Is that if it's emotionally connected to you, then it's going to work. And oftentimes people have to go from negative self-talk to more neutral self-talk, and then maybe to positive self-talk if really needed. But very rarely do you go from negative to positive self-talk because it's going from, ice cold water to scalding hot, and it's just too much of a contrast. And the brain just goes, I'm not going to believe that. I've been telling myself this negative thought, probably not just once or twice in my life. I've told myself the same thing over and over and over and over again for years. Because think about the negative stuff that we wrote down today on here about body image, or what's the point? I'm not good enough. Any perfectionism, those big words like no one, never, always, everybody. I bet you just didn't think of them today. I bet you thought of them yesterday, maybe the day before that, last week, last month, last 6 months, last year. For most of us, that's what the findings show us. The research about negative self-talk shows us is that it's repetitive. It's a pattern. Think of it like a little Lego tower, like boom, 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 boom. It gets high. Every thought serves a purpose in the brain, and it etches out. Think of like a highway, and the highway starts very skinny, about this thick. And then every time we think it, it gets thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. And so I describe it like going on a little dirt road, and it's just you think it the first time. And this could go for the positive or more neutral thought too. So to kind of say, I don't really, it's not really sticking with me. So we got to find something that sticks, and it's going to, again, kind of back to fake it till you make it. It's going to feel a little untrue. It's kind of like you have a machete and you're in the bush and you're just hacking down all these trees and wild plants, and you're making a new pathway. That's what growing looks like. That's what new self-talk looks like, is it looks like that. And once you do it, eventually the path is skinny and it's barely there. But if you go back again, it gets a little wider. That dirt path now gets a little more trampled. You can really kind of see it more that now, and then you get from point A to point B. And then the more that you do that, it goes from a dirt path to now it's completely visible. In fact, the more you travel it, it actually gets wider. That's how it looks like in scans of the brain. So you could now not just walk it, but you could bring a friend. You could actually now bring dirt bikes. Actually, now you could bring ATVs. Oh, now you could bring quads, side by sides. It's getting wider and wider. Oh, you can bring pickup trucks now. Oh, it's wider. Oh, now we can add another lane. So you can see how the analogy goes. Oh, it's getting wider. It's more quicker to go to. It's more my automatic route. It's easier to get to versus that first time. And every day we have a choice of what we think about, or what new thought, what new path we're trying to create in the brain. Yeah. And it can be exhausting, but it's so worth it. I mean, we have the same amount time and energy, and we just have to decide what we allocate it to. Do we want to spend it to just give into that negative spiral? Or do we want to try to give a little bit to it, combating it? And that this is where I don't think you ever should do it alone. I don't think anybody has to do it alone. Find friends, find groups, find small groups, find a counselor, find family, talk about it. This is where you can learn about it. I think this is where, in the age of technology too, is we have all of these resources. Again, this is really, if you're looking specifically, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Look for apps, look for books, look for workbooks, look for websites, podcasts, YouTube. Watch this, watch the Therapy Talks podcast, or the Self-Love Journal, the Silencing Your Inner Critic online course, or the workbooks, journals coming out. Find people that you resonate with, of different people on social media, even Instagram, TikTok. There actually are some really good stuff out there to find just bite-sized examples of this, so that you don't feel so alone or that it's so exhausting. And I think, if anything, I want to encourage you that it's worth it. And that's another good thing to combat your identifying, oh, I'm exhausted, what's the point type thinking. Maybe that's where we get a sticky note and you just write out a quote that resonates with you of keep going. You have permission to rest. Maybe go online and find some other inspirational quotes, but even giving yourself permission to rest, or you are worth it. Pick one thing, do the next right thing. Pick something small but very tangible that you can see. And then even if you don't feel it, you don't have to think of it on the spot. You've already took the time. You've already put up the sticky note or taped it up to your bathroom window or mirror, and you can see it and just say, okay, I'm going to do that. And of what you can do in that moment to combat some negative self-talk. So it's writing it out. It's here, I'll show you what I like to do in terms of a journal prompt kind of for this to help just start to get a more objective perspective. But I like to write out the situation and the negative thought. And this is all in step 1 of identify still, and we can go into more challenge next week, but situation and negative thought. So would someone want to share an example? I mean, I can share one, but I'd love to hear one from the group if you'd like. And it could be from today. It could be from this weekend, last week, last year, but a situation and a negative thought. So it could be, again, I'm in a meeting, I spoke up, nobody said anything. My negative thought was, I look like such an idiot. I should quit my job. I'm probably going to get fired. I'm not good enough to be here. No one likes me. Things like that. So if anyone would like to share a situation and maybe a negative thought, and it could be hypothetical or it could be one that you've experienced too. And this is all part of identify. So step 1, identify. 2 will be challenge. 3 will be replace. And I like to break it down into those because then it's not so overwhelming of what do I do next? How do I even just identify what a negative thought is? How do I challenge it? Think of a friend. What would they say to you, a specific friend, or what you would say to them? Is it 100% true? That's often what I ask myself too. Who first said it? Who says? Maybe it's somebody else's voice. And if we can identify it, it loses some power and sting. And replace, that's collecting new evidence for how I am good, how I am good enough, how I am well today at work, those sort of things. How I am showing up at work, how I am good enough at work. What did I learn today? How am I growing? How did I get recognized? Those are big things that oftentimes we just, oh, it's not a big deal, or, you just kind of cast it aside, but we want to let it sink in. That's why writing it out is so important, to really let this sit in and let the muscle really grow. Someone says, oh, it's Amit. Thank you. I know so much about off-roading. Well, I am from the Midwest of the US. My husband is very Canadian and loves that stuff. Yes. Oh, good. Maddie, I'm glad you like that analogy. It does help me to see things like that too, to just give myself permission that I'm not supposed to have this killer huge highway in my brain just yet. It really starts out small, but does grow, and every thought does count to help grow. Holistic psychologist. Yes, that's a great resource. I love her work on Instagram, and her books too are really good. Okay. Yes. Identify, challenge, replace. Okay. Malia's giving an example. I voiced my opinion on a topic that my husband doesn't have knowledge about, yet he rolled his eyes and dismissed me in front of others. My negative self-talk was, why do you hate me? So you're around people. So it's public. So you spoke up about a topic that you felt something towards. You felt like you knew a little bit more than your husband about, and then you were dismissed by him, invalidated. And that was public. That would be really hurtful and embarrassing. And then that negative self-talk, why do you hate me? Okay, so this is just what I often suggest. It's a little thought record, but the situation and then the negative thought. And if there's any words that really stick out to anyone, but I'm going to just circle hate. That's a big one. And then again, just how it's targeted at you, me. That would exasperate shame because it's so, I mean, hate's a big, strong word here that maybe if we even just challenged that or switched it out afterwards, we're not going to do it in the moment because I hear you on that. It's very emotional. That would be a very hurtful instance and situation. So no wonder our brain goes there. It's trying to protect us. But if we reflect on it, let's say at the end of the day, or once we cool a little bit, or go for a walk, like kind of do something to move our body, get some realignment going, we can change that word. And then we can kind of separate it from the shame. And we can feel bad, which is a little bit more like guilt. I feel bad, but I am not bad. That's shame. I am bad. Something's wrong with me. And so then it could be, going back and let's say some strategies. And I'd love to hear from everybody else too, what you would like to do in that situation or something like that happened to you. I would journal about it, maybe talk to a safe friend. And then, of course, once you calm down and come from a more gentle, not even gentle, just a more calm down space, you can talk to your husband and tell him how hurtful that was and disrespectful. And then from there, hopefully reconcile. But I think there's some things to do there, just trying to change that negative self-talk. So another situation arises, let's say in 2 weeks from now, and this thought is not your automatic negative thought again, that maybe it's, why do you not like me? And then maybe eventually it goes down to, why do you do that in front of other people? Why? That's really embarrassing. I feel really embarrassed. Should I have said that? No, I think that was good what I said. You actually don't know what you're talking about here. And do you see how that slowly comes down the staircase? That maybe it doesn't go from negative to positive immediately, but it can come down a staircase a little bit. And that's more of the goal. That's how it actually sticks. That's how it doesn't just evaporate. And I know I'm really playing this down because I know, and I'm not minimizing this at all, how hard that would be and why it's so important to take your time journaling through that, talking to safe people, whether that's friends, family, a counselor, working through that with your husband, but getting at the root of that, of feeling disrespected or what you say doesn't count, that worthless feeling. And there's something about that, even just I'm seeing the word of, why do you hate me? That there's shame, there's big wording involved in here and how painful that would be. And so it will take some time, that it's very emotionally triggered. And I'm sorry that you felt that way and thought that way. And I wish for you to have a more balanced perspective. And I don't mean to dismiss that or minimize it, of just think this way, just think positively, because I don't think that works. But I'm just saying how to come down that staircase over time and a lot of hard work, but that you're so worth it. And I think it's really brave of you to speak up in public, whether you know a lot about a topic or not, but that's humanity. That's conversation, that's connection. And then iron can sharpen iron there. And so thank you for sharing that example. Yeah. Struggling. Maddie says, what if you struggle with speaking up for yourself? Yes, that is a big one. And I think we can get almost freeze. It's analysis paralysis in the moment. Is we don't know what to say, so we don't say anything, or we choke. So it could be in public speaking or a work meeting or a boundary or a relationship or a conflict. And there's something so emotional that we can't actually think about what we're thinking about or what we want to say in that moment. We just freeze. Analysis paralysis. We don't know what to do. And so that's why I kind of suggested in that previous example of after the fact, after taking some time to calm down, journaling, talking to safe people, getting some other external voices, maybe counseling, couples counseling can be really great for that too. And then again, of course, talking in a more calm way, with each other for conflict resolution and actually going to the source, facing that fear. And so speaking up for yourself is all about assertive communication. That would be a great topic to learn more about if this is an area that interests you. So the topic or the name that we use is assertive communication. But basically, a good rule of thumb is keep it clear, keep it short, keep it concise, keep it kind, polite, respectful. But again, there in that example too, there was the disrespect. That's what is really emotionally charged in a lot of this is my boundaries crossed, or I'm feeling disrespected or dismissed. And then it's hard to speak up for myself. Some people actually, even if I ask them, where in your body do you feel that? And they can go back and say, right here. It's like it's stuck in my throat and won't come out. Or like somebody's grabbing my arms and I just can't get out. It's that trapped feeling. And so in that instance, we often work a lot of writing it out and practicing first, just thinking about things to say, going back to situations and what I wish I said or what I could have said, or someone that you think emulates this very well or handles these things well and what that person would have said. So kind of borrowing from them or their playbook for a little bit until it becomes your own, writing it out of saying, okay, this is what I'm going to practice to say next time. Or even if you reflect on the previous experience, writing about it, visualizing what you would have said. We actually sometimes in therapy too is we role play and we act it out again. So this event could have happened, but I'm going to sit in this chair and I'll pretend to be somebody, you, and then you pretend to be that other person or vice versa. And we role play, and you actually start by writing it out. And then you start by speaking it out. And we usually just pick something very simple to start, very clear, but to communicate it clearly, maybe one thing. Again, whether it's a work meeting, I'm going to speak up today and I'm going to pick one thing. Or if it's a conflict, to highlight this one really big value of mine, to feel respected because I'm feeling disrespected and dismissed. I'm going to pick this one thing to start with to just really get my point across. And we practice that. We do some role playing. Oftentimes we have to write about it first, and then we practice it out. We can visualize it too. So writing it, visualizing it, and then practicing. That can be a big one. And even if you don't go to therapy or you don't have someone to practice with, practice in your mirror. Have a conversation with yourself and start practicing, just getting used to hearing yourself say these words. And it can be kind of awkward, but it can also be very empowering. And it's just a new habit that you're forming and that you can do it. And then you look for opportunities to do it. So this is really that replace end of it, is you look for the opportunities to speak up. Not so much to be obnoxious or domineering, but to maybe in the past where you would have kept quiet in a meeting, or if something bothered you, you take that deep breath and you've already practiced what you're going to say. So you don't have to think of it on the spot. You've already written it down. In fact, you can keep it in the notes section of your phone to go back to, and then you get to practice doing it. And the key is to always be proud of yourself, even if it's flubbed and you mesh the words together, they had no idea what you said. You get to decide, do I beat myself up and say, oh, why did I speak up? I'm such a loser. I should never do that again. Or you get to decide, nobody else. If you say, wow, I showed up, I'm trying, I'm practicing, and it will be so worth it. And I'm just really proud of myself for trying something new. So the situation didn't change. It was just your perspective. It was what you told yourself. And that's the biggest thing. Is, again, back to in psychology, we don't necessarily always care about the situation. We care about your unique perspective of it and how we can help you with that. Yeah, Shelley says, I always give others the benefit of the doubt and excuse hurtful behavior. This does not honor myself, and it's hard to change that pattern. Yes. I always give others the benefit of the doubt. So maybe here it's instead of excusing hurtful behaviors. So again, when maybe somebody didn't even apologize, maybe they do, and we minimize it because we don't like conflict and we say, oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. But if it is a big deal to you, if it hurt you before and it's really not fine, let's not let our words say that. Let's stay true and honoring and respectful to who we are and to them, but say, that did really hurt me. And I do want to work this out together, but that did really hurt and I'm going to need some time. That could be it. Oh, Malia, thank you, thank you, thank you, Barbara. Oh, thank you all for just participating and sharing some of these things. And so today we're talking a lot about identify. Next time, we're going to talk a lot more about challenge. And then the next time, we're going to talk a lot more about replace. And I just want to encourage you that these are broken down into these steps more so because it's easier to grasp in the moment, because it's so hard to think, oh, what do I do? What do I say? Just this week, if I encourage you, go this week and keep this log, keep this situation and this negative thought log. And most often we suggest keeping a log for a week to 2 weeks, because we're creatures of habits and patterns. And we're going to see in about 2 weeks, there's going to be some of your go-to words, some of your go-to situations, some of your go-to phrases that are different than other people's. And so your takeaway or your homework would be just simply like that in your journal, write about the situation and write about what your negative thought is. So get it out, free up some mental real estate from up here, get it onto a piece of paper. And just by doing that, it often takes the emotional volatility away from it. Doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but it does. It's not so raw, maybe. And it often offers a better, more objective perspective, even the next day. So in the moment, let's say, I spoke up in that meeting, nobody said anything. I could feel how hot I got. Even, connect to your body. Where am I feeling it in my body? So the situation, I spoke up in a meeting, my negative thought afterwards was, oh, I sounded so dumb. Probably everyone thinks I have no idea what I'm talking about. Well, I'm going to write that out. And then the next day, the 24-hour rule, I'm going to look back at it and think, is it that emotionally charged still? Chances are it's not as intense as it was in that moment. So it's going to dissipate. So if the emotional volatility, that rawness is out, then I should be able to be more intentional in how I identify, challenge, and replace it. Meaning that my upstairs brain or my more rational way of thinking is going to sink in a little bit more instead of my downstairs brain or my more volatile, primitive brain, where it's so emotional and I just feel so stuck. It feels so true and it's blah, analysis paralysis. But if I give it some time after I've written it down, I've given it some time and I go back and I reflect on it, chances are I'm going to be able to be a little bit more objective or come up with some of these more cognitive strategies, these thinking strategies. And they're going to stick a little bit better than if I did it right in the moment. Oh, Shelly, she says, I'm so happy to have found this in you. Oh, we're so thankful to have you, Shelly, and all of you on today. It is so fun just to interact with y'all and just see, what resonates with different people. And it's amazing with those 2 board exercises. Those were unique to each one of you, but I bet that you all resonated at least with a few of them. So you may have come on today thinking, I really struggle with this type of negative self-talk, but then you saw the other types too, whether it's body image or I'm not good enough or I'm too much or the never, always, perfectionism. And we realize, wow, I have aspects of that in me. And I have all of these to some extent, or the comparison, or wow, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one. That can be so powerful, so powerful. And so I just want to encourage you. I want to thank you for being so willing to show up, because that is honestly the hardest part, is just showing up and practicing. And so keep track of this, that situation, the negative thought. Let's come back together next week and go through the challenge portion of it. But I would love to hear even, what is it like for you? Just keeping a log of that. What happens to you? Does it lessen its intensity of the negative thoughts? That would be great just by doing that. So thank you all. If anyone has any other questions, I'm just going to open it up now too. And I'll just wait if you want to type in and ask any questions. And again, we'll keep this going for next week too, next Monday. Oh, Maddie says, these therapy talks are so helpful. Oh, I can't afford therapy right now, but these and other resources help so much. Oh, so great. Yes. Are you on Instagram? Yes, mine is Alive Counselling with 2 L's because I'm in Canada. I'll type that out. That's my website too. I have a lot of resources on there. Switch puts out some amazing resources. They're on the ball. Our therapy talks is amazing. Our YouTube lives are amazing. We have different therapists that come on. So Joelle has tomorrow. She's going to talk about increasing resilience and reducing stress, which can be, that sounds awesome. So there's lots of good resources. And I hear that a lot of therapy is really expensive. And I just encourage people, you know what, you'll never regret investing in yourself. And you don't always necessarily have to go to therapy in every season of your life. I think you can utilize these different resources, workbooks, credible sources, therapy talks, YouTube's, different therapists that you follow, and gain some insight there. I would just encourage you to pick one thing each week that maybe resonates with you and practice that. There is something really powerful about just being validated and heard and seen, which is the therapeutic process. That's therapy, as we just welcome you as is. There's no trying to fix. We'll give you strategies, but that comes. We really just hold a beautiful space for you to be validated and process through your story. And it doesn't have to happen in every season of your life, but finding those people, those safe people, whether it's in therapy or friends or family, and journaling can be such a gift. And depending on where you are, there are great, different avenues to help get it covered too, or sliding scale. A lot of therapists do that. I have about 10 graduate student interns who provide free counseling for people. So there's a lot of really great opportunities. There's benefits that cover, but I do know that finances cover, add a big part to it. So if we can help find you resources, that would be awesome too. Because I think everybody deserves covered therapy. I honestly do. I think that in healthcare, everyone deserves to have covered, because we're all human and we all have stuff. And a lot of therapists do sliding scales. So I would encourage you, if you feel like now in your life you need that, to look for that. But if not, I think gathering these resources can be amazing too. And Jamie says, I'm just so grateful for these free resources. And I use the library a lot too for books or audiobooks from the library. Yes, there's a lot of really good stuff out there, even at the library. This one I really like, I brought out as another resource to show you today, the self-confidence workbook. Again, it's all cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. This is a really good workbook too, and book to do, and you can get it at the library, or on like Indigo in Canada, or Barnes & Noble, or Amazon, and anywhere in the world this comes. And I think it's about $20 to $25, but it's very, very good too. So the self-confidence workbook, and it looks like this. It's very, very good. One of my favorites. I feel that I'm an imposter when I try to fake it until I make it. What is the difference? Between imposter syndrome and that. So again, I don't think the fake it until you make it is not a long-term strategy. It's just mostly to give you permission to keep trying in the process, that you don't have to feel it or believe it to be true overnight. Because again, back to that, highway analogy or pathway analogy, it takes a long time for the paths to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And so that's more of what I mean by it. Imposter syndrome is often, let's say you post something on social media and you're feeling pretty low confidence about yourself, but you post yourself like you're having a beautiful dinner out and living my best life. Well, those values don't align right there of, that's a false reality to how you're truly feeling inside. That's more imposter syndrome. And so that's usually how we differentiate that. But again, you're not going to ever feel something overnight. It's not a fast food type fix whatsoever. It's more long-term. And so it's just being kind with yourself in the process. And if you're feeling like you've given it, say 2 months of solid effort, day in and day out, of being intentional and consistent, then maybe find a different strategy or therapist. But that's usually the good time frame, that it's going to take some time and effort. All right. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We'll see you next Monday. And again, just practice writing down the situation and your negative thought and see what happens. And I look forward to hearing about it. Okay, bye.